Hello everyone, and welcome back to Wargame Red Dragon. We have another replay review today at the request of Polska Gora, so it's the second time we've seen him request this. He is a private, and I am always happy to do these sorts of things. Standard disclaimers apply. I can only tell you advice from my own playstyle. I am between Colonel and Brigadier General, and so take that for what it may or may not be worth. Now, there is an additional disclaimer for this game, so well, I guess I should say, there'll also be deck review sort of at the end. I have some suggested changes I think might help you out, Polska, so if you want to skip to the end to look at those, you're more than welcome. But my additional disclaimer is that I asked on Discord for permission to be absolutely brutal with this one, which is not my normal MO, and I've actually recorded it twice already, and then decided I was insufficiently brutal, and, you know, well, this one is the one that you guys will eventually see. Think of that what you will. And I don't know, we'll see. I'm not sure if I'm feeling it, but there's a lot here. So, yeah, let's actually just stop right here. This moment, right here and onward, is where you need to be responding to this, because you have a Hera 2, it's in a forward position, it's in a very good forward position, it can see really far, you've spotted your enemy's advance. If you see this, they're not going over here with anything significant. And yet you are. So you have OTAB 71s, probably with Proletary 90 or Paroporanci. You have a Strop 2, another OTAB 71 here, a Hind that is sitting there not fighting anything, and could well be over here screening. And your first buy is an M84AN, which is a good unit. This is a really good unit. But I think this sort of is... So you said to me in Discord that this was an incredibly close game, and I immediately told you after having watched it, no. I disagree. And this moment and some of the buys right here between now and about 36 minutes in are the reason I think it was not a very close game. Because the question is, what can this M84AN do on its own? You have double AMX 10 RC coming up, you have Rover Wombats, the RCSB, you have this whole column. You can pretty well assume that you're not going to be able to hold the side of Boris. But the thing is, you don't really care about this, because your aim is to take all of Feder. So, alright, take it and go from there, and try to not let this situation become worse than it has to be. Right, if we flip right now to neutral, yeah, there's a Lux A1, there's a Rover Wombat, Vila Ray, a couple of these guys, you have more than enough force to go right through here and not care. And even keeping the Mi-25S24 here is not the end of the world. Like, this is good. You're slowing your opponent down, you'll get more of a lock on Feder, but you need to be responding to Boris and Dmitry right now. And so how do you do that? How do you have the right buys for this? If the M84AN is a bit questionable, which, I don't know, it could well be a good pick, but it doesn't need to come over here, it needs to come over here, and now we see why it's questionable. It's not even going to have left your base yet. It's behind your base. And these 10 RCSBs, with their fast speed on roads and all that, are already going to beeline right into your 2. So what I'd recommend instead is immediately buy high-quality infantry and slam them into the towns, because what makes Dmitry really tough for the blue side to hold if they're going in from this direction is infantry here and fire support from the side, not having a single AN shooting in, which is just not going to be enough, which sucks, but, you know, such is life, and the rest of this needs to be moving over. So you have the M84AN, well, okay, you put them up here, you block off that reinforcement line down the pipe as much as you can, you have the Conqueror's M, that's great, you put them up this way. Right, so you lock this down, that's fine, but you need to be putting pressure on the most direct line of reinforcement through Anna, getting infantry up and into these towns, and fire support over here. That's at least how I would do it. Playing on Taunt, you have some good tools for this. Padobranci 90 are very good, but you don't even need that necessarily. You could go with Proletary 90, although Padobranci 90 would give you better zoning. So if you have 2 of those and you have them right here or right here, the boom bars can shoot in and deny all of this section of woods to enemy armor and vehicles, which is certainly something that Leclerc is trying to take advantage of here. And may I just say, we can also tell something about this. Actually, we could have, yeah, is that a Rover Wombat? I believe that is. Yeah, so look at the Rover Wombat's veterancy. This is Mac, which is interesting. You'll often see this push as a blue moto push, but your opponent's doing it today as Mac. And we'll see that later on when he brings out Leopard 2A1s, but it should also tell you that other than this sort of fast stuff, he doesn't have much to support it. His infantry are going to be tracked. His best wheeled units are the ones he's using right now, And so the ability of blue to come in and have this be a continual thing is very limited. It's not like a Moto deck that can slam in Legion 90 and VAB T2013s behind all of this. This is his mechanized bit, yeah. So not a cheek. It's decently fast on the roads, yeah, but it's not going to have the same response time as something with Moto that would already be threatening to be inside your towns. And your M84ANs up here, great. If this buy was infantry, they'd be in here. They'd be in here. And you'd have some good resource to move forward, get some kills, move back to stay alive, and then your tracked elements can come up and forward, right? But the second buy is an M84A. This S24 resupplying is very nice. And moving the M84AN over is very nice. Like, this is a nice response to it. The British Capes, I can see why you're just having them hold there, and it is nice to rotate these BVPs. This is going to be the issue with just the M84. It's like, yeah, it's a nice pick on the Chaparral. What do you do against 4 AMX-10 RCSBs? And what can you do with this? Other than die, right? Not ideal. Very much not ideal. And yeah, so, I mean, if you think about that, if that was Paderborn 90 right here, or moving up through, then some of the AMX-10s are dead. If it was Proletary 90, some of the AMX-10s are dead. This infantry can no longer get into the town. That retreat is no longer safe. And then your S24 just rotates over, and all of a sudden his wheeled stuff can't really operate here. Although I think it would be better to have the other helicopter, but we'll save that for the deck review, because this thing is just very limited by comparison. Yeah. And without the AN, the M84A is blind. This is not a recipe for success here. And I want you to look as well at what finally does work, because later on in this replay, you do push back a little bit from Dimitri, and I want you to see how it does and doesn't go well, because if you had done the section that goes well in the first 2 minutes, then you have a better fighting chance, right? And there are some silver linings here as well. You still do have the Brzka. Oh, yeah, looks. Blind helicopter forward. That's the result. Goodness gracious, I'm in a grumpy mood today. I do apologize. Oh man, it happens. Alright, so you have silver linings here. You have all of Feder. I like the fact that the Paderborn 90 are moving up around the side. It's questionable because they're not in combat, but you can put pressure on center with this. So this is not bad. This side of the map is not bad at all. And you still have infantry in Boris, you have Pruskomnichi in Boris. This right now is actually good for you, because if you had managed to push this back out, you still have your toehold in Boris, and that becomes a win. You don't even need to push Anna. The main thing is you need to, in the first couple of minutes, recognize where the threat is going and deal with it with appropriate buys and appropriate positioning. And here we didn't have that. The tanks were the wrong buys, and we'll see other sort of incorrect or not optimal buys later on as well. It's great as a support, but just look at the difference that this makes when you have infantry here, right? MX-10RC, boom, dead immediately. You have 2 of those over here. Most of the MX-10RCs over there are dead right now. Without those, your M84AN is much safer, can provide good fire support. Also, click E to stop the Proletary 90 if they're doing this. You don't want them walking through a town instead of actually living in it. So those are dead. Your Proletary 90 aren't getting shot. And you can sort of deal with, I mean, that looks A1 probably wouldn't have gotten past there as well, but even if you did, it wouldn't be less safe. And this is why we had in the Discord a pretty extended discussion about this drop 2. And this Fighting Falcon is basically directly overflying it. Right? It's even evacing over it. This drop 2, I think, does not have the performance to merit its cost. Because if that was a Sava, odds are that Fighting Falcon's dead. And even if it wasn't, it would be severely injured. So it's just not as good against that sort of multi-role thing. And with the small clip before it reloads, well, the small volley size, I suppose, it's really difficult. It's really just pretty difficult. Another thing too, Promass moving forward here, the looks should have been assumed to have been alive. A couple of mortar rounds is not going to be enough to kill it. So T55AH Igman now going up the 3rd unit, going blind into a recon unit, is going to be a really tough thing. So yeah, I mean, it does get the kill, right? But at what cost? There's already been a 75-point helicopter and a mortar as well on top of it. And you're getting nice kills here on the Haute tab. This is going to be a nice distraction. The Paderborn can go up forward here. That's nice. You still have control of this section of woods, right? So all of that is good. But it's not enough to make it I would say a close game, because the infantry got in here. And this is going to be really hard to root out. Even while you're engaging it with your own infantry, these other 10 RCSBs are pretty much safe. Your M84AN is too damaged to really support this. Getting infantry here would have made such a difference. If you had asked me to say one thing over the course of about 5 seconds and then upload it, that would be what I would say. Infantry here as a response to that initial push. Single most impactful thing that I could tell you. If you want to boil it all down to one sort of a single comment, that would be it. But we have more to go. We have a lot left in this game, 20 minutes left in this game, and there's a significant amount to talk about as well later on. So if you recognize that your opponent is buying nothing but these light tanks, not really buying any sort of heavy lifting units there, and once we recognize it is Mac, which we can again because the veterancy on the 13 VTTs as well as on the Nanasan Shikis and the STRF 9040, this is not motorized. Oh yeah, sorry, I gotta pick on this too. Then we can have a bit different buys. But what was this Orao 2 looking for? If you want to leave it in the comment what it was looking for, because I really couldn't decide. I thought maybe it was trying to go for the AMXs, but then you just rocket pod this area that looks like a fire on position, because the fire on position won't use the Mavericks. And that is dead. So that's a 100-point waste of a unit right there, because it doesn't have a clear target. It's far better to just have something with recon that can spot it, and then engage even with the Igman that you have here, and, you know, get this stuff scooching forward. Smoke, by the way, right on this ridge. The AMX-10s can't shoot your Padobranci, rather, and you get into the town. There you go. So that would be a lot better, I think. But then, what I was saying before with recognizing what your opponent is and isn't buying, this deck has 2 super heavies in it, although the Moderna is sort of an iffy super heavy, but still. You have the big Vihor, and you have the Moderna. And once you recognize you're fighting against a mech deck in Dimitri here, and a mech deck that's really reliant on those quick-wheeled tankettes, I'd just buy a Moderna, man. Like, if you think about it, you've bought an AN, you've bought 2 M84As, you've bought a T55AH Igman, most of it has died. The Moderna has a lot more armor, because the M84A chassis has 15 front. You have the autocannon as well as the main gun, that's really, really powerful, really impactful. And it just laughs at all of this. Oh, there's more AMX-10 RCSBs? That's fine, we just kill them. We'll even kill them with the autocannon, because of the paper-thin baguette armor on the RCSBs and the RCs is like, yeah, I can't do anything. And so that's how we layer this for a better push-out, because now you have problems. In the first couple minutes of this, you had infantry still here. Now you don't. And that's entirely because this situation was not resolved quickly enough. If this situation was resolved in the first 5-6 minutes, then you can support your infantry here. Dimitri's locked down. You cap Dimitri, you cap Feder, you countercap Boris, you ticket +1 for 30 minutes, and you win the game that way. And it doesn't have to be glamorous, and it doesn't have to be some big push into Anna or some big offensive anywhere else. It just needs to be a +1 tick your opponent can't do anything with. And so getting the fast response units in location quickly is part of that, and then bringing out the things that your opponent's deck can't handle is another part of that. So third M84A. And, you know, this thing, it hits harder than a Leopard 2 A1, that's definitely true, but the 15 front, it still will struggle with that engagement, particularly if there's something like a Verkenning there, or anything else that gives recon, which, now it's time to talk about that, I think. There haven't been a lot of recon buys here, and recon is a force multiplier. It allows you to use your units to their full potential. This is a little goofy. And not having it means that your tanks can't shoot at their max range or anything close to it. It means that they're much less valuable than they otherwise would be. And with the Padobranci here, with BVPs moving up, which I definitely approve of, with the AH Igman, I mean, you had to get right up close to the Gepard A1 to kill it, and your opponent didn't even move it back. Like, that's a really good pick. And it would have been a good pick as well if there was recon here moving forward with this to spot and identify these targets. You might even, if you had recon infantry here, if something shoots in these backwoods, you can engage it. That Chuma never would have been hidden right there if you had a recon infantry with one of these buys. Mistral never would have been hidden. All this stuff is dead sooner, and that's good for you. The other issue that you're going to have is that 99% of people reinforce right into here, right into this section. And so Most mech players who play on plunging, who know about this, will take high veterancy mechanized infantry, and their singular goal will be to push all the way down to right here. Because if they deny your reinforcement line, then they kill the BVPs before they've unloaded, they panic your infantry, they kill your infantry, and these Rolvite 90 will deal with Mechanizovana in BVP, which is incredibly valuable, right? Like, that's really excellent return on investment for your opponent. It's one of the things that you definitely want to avoid. So, the Igman is dead, had no recon, we don't know what killed it. M84A is up here, something wants to shoot at it, but we don't know because we have no recon, so we can't kill it. Now you can see, but I mean, even then, recon right here, and that's a dead AMX 10RC, and again, it's one of those light vehicle buys. The M163CS, a light vehicle buy. All of that stuff is light vehicles, and you have the equipment to deal with it. You're just not bringing it out. Goodness gracious, okay. I said at the beginning we'll see how I feel for this, and let me just say, this is exactly how I feel, even when I do replays of my own, and they're a little bit sort of more genial than this. Sometimes I feel the same way. I'm like, dude, why the hell did I buy another M84A? It's just gonna die to an RCSB because blue stuff and blue decks take these, and it's really annoying, and it's probably one of my least favorite decks to have to deal with, and grump, 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 grump. But you have the tools, and recognizing that it is much better of a tool is part of turning this from a loss into a win. Now, your opponent's taking +2 on you, 210 to 0. You have the Velitelska UAZ here, which, by the way, CV Jeeps. We're going to talk about that later in the deck review. And this is where your opponent's tick stops mattering quite as much, because you still have 26 minutes. Even at +1, you win by a mile, because I mean, it's 150 points every 10 minutes. You have something like, what is that, 375, 390 or so available. Another M84AN buy. This is nice because of the recon, but again, look at how much damage it's taking. 15 front. The 10RC wouldn't even be able to shoot at your Moderna. Well, yeah, the recon version anyway. Wouldn't even be able to hit your Moderna at that range for anything, because it wouldn't scratch the paint. And this is 110 points. The Moderna's 160. That's 2 Mechanizovana in BVP. Which, if those were still alive, is something that you can go up there. And we can see the impact now of not having that strong anchor. You're still being picked apart by a blue mech deck, even in the open ground, where your unspec tanks can have the heavyweight advantage because you have super heavies, and they just need to be on the field. If you're going to take 2 cards of super heavies, bring them out. Use them. If you're going to have 2 cards of super heavies and you recognize that it's an enemy mech deck, definitely use them, because why the hell wouldn't you? Right? Like, you use those tanks to laugh at everything that your opponent's bringing out. And instead, M84As, you're fighting your opponent symmetrically. Never fight your opponent fairly if you can avoid it. Ever. If that means you bring, if that means he brings super heavies and your answer to that is ATGMs and creative locations, great. If that means that your opponent's deck doesn't have super heavies and so you take a super heavy and laugh your way to the bank, great, that's awesome. Do it. Every single time. Don't even hesitate. If you see, okay, this is a mech deck, best is the 2A1, or if they're feeling spicy, it's the M1A1 Abrams. Doesn't matter. Moderna kills those. The big VHOR kills those. The Moderna has the autocannon as well. The VHOR has better accuracy. Frankly, I like the VHOR much more, but that's just me. And then we also need to address some of what happened over in Fetter since then. So you've used a lot of your tools to try to stem the tide here, and that's good. However, they've now had some attrition, and there needs to be recon up with this stuff at all times, because this drop 2 is 60 points. It's not disposable, right? Very much not disposable. So a nice thing to do when you lock down this section in Fetter is immediately buy a single recon infantry, very cheap, and you put him either in this section of town, which is admittedly predictable, here if you can get it, and or in this line of woods, as long as you have the guns over here to support it, which you did. Now you don't, but you definitely did at one point. Also, these guys have been sitting here for about 3 minutes before unloaded. That's not really good micro for that. And then I do have to question your buys again. You have this drop 2 over here for what? If it's to kill the Puma HC-1, then you're dramatically overinvesting against a transport helicopter that can't fight, while this situation is unresolved. I think part of it, honestly, and part of why it felt like such a close game and I disagreed, is because there's a difference of opinion on what the objective is, at this point. So this point to you probably felt pretty confident, and to me, this is still a disaster. And the question is, how do we deal with it? And how we deal with what's going wrong is what directs where our buys go and what our buys are. 2 Thermomigs, by the way. I think this is just the first one, but blind Thermomig, never as good as buying stuff on the ground. This guy barely gets much done, and even if he has a couple of kills, later on I'll show you the bombing runs over here are not as effective as perhaps you might have thought they were during the game. So the objective right now is very simple. You have control of this corner of Boris. You don't need to be attacking into that side. You need to solve this problem. Right here, right now, this is the problem that you need to solve. All of your buys should be directed toward this. Because if you've been down on trading, and you have, then you need a concentration of forces. It's your opponent's prerogative to try and spread things out while they have the advantage in points. Like, yeah, it's a conquest game, and people will say, oh, it's a conquest game, don't play it like destruction. But you do have to count. You have to have that internal tally of, well, has this been going well or poorly? If it's been going well, can I spread the front and stress my opponent? If it's been going poorly, how do I make up for that difference? And here, when things have been going poorly, the worst thing you could do is a light push somewhere else. Especially against blue mech, because even your best infantry are going to struggle more than they otherwise would, because your opponent has higher infantry veterancy just from the specialization of their deck. It's very tough to deal with. And then I have some issues as well with the Prom S's. I don't really know what these guys are meant to do here, because if we take a look at the unit card, this thing has 24-50 meter range, but relatively low accuracy at 35%, high HE. These guys are long-range infantry killers off their main gun, and long-range anti-vehicle screening off the Conquerors. It's 20 AP, 45% accuracy. It's long-range, 26-25 is very nice, but 20 AP is not enough to deal with heavy tanks, which you don't necessarily need here, so I can understand it as a way to zone out those AMX-10s, but then you really need to be careful with your positioning, because what's going to happen, both of these get way too close. They don't have targets that they can shoot at. They don't really have screening here, by the way. Fighting Falcon, oof. Strop 2, useless. Even if it did fire 2 Iglas there, it's not going to get the kill. And these Prom S's kind of get pancaked, which is not exactly great. In part because your front line here is dead, but even I wouldn't bring these in woods fighting, and the reason is 2 front is not very reliable for it. So we think of 2 front as, oh, this is really nice for infantry transports, but it's not nice for infantry transports for fighting in the woods. It's nice for getting them there alive, because that 2 frontal armor can take a shell from a tank gun and sometimes survive. Yeah, this is it. So SAS, your Burj may as well have not been bought. They're not going to be able to accomplish anything here. This was a waste of points that could have gone into the 2 point. Yeah, look at this. So the Rovite 90, 16 AP launcher, dead in 1 shot. 16 AP, 1 shots 2 front. A lot of people take that on their infantry, even their lines where they can get it. Blue definitely takes it on their lines because they get Rovite 90 and they get the Zeldas, and they have really nice fire support for cheap with those infantry buys, again, for very cheap, just 10-point infantry. Killed a 35-point vehicle in 1 shot. And the next one doesn't fare much better. Right, so you either don't buy those and you buy more to clear these woods. Again, a super heavy would be very nice. M84A times 5 is not really going to get it done where the first 4 failed. You need to engage differently. When something's not working, you have to change what you're doing. And in this game so far, all of those M84As have died because of insufficient recon and too much firing back at them at close range against 15 armor. So buy a super heavy, change the paradigm, make your opponent respond to what you are doing differently, make them have to try really hard and struggle really hard to get those kills, and that's where something like a Thermomig might actually be appropriate. Instead of this bombing here, you zone out these sections, right? So you hit right here, you hit right here, in coordination with an attack. And because of the Thermomig, all of your opponent's stuff has to move out of the fire. It's not going to be combat capable, it's not going to be calm, it's going to be all of the, I mean, look at that, Fighting Falcon does not care. Yep, no, doesn't give a shit. Strop 2, Igla. That one hit. It still only did 4. Even if it lands 2, it's only going to do 8. Even if there's 1 point of chip off the gun like there was, it's still alive. This Strop 2 has to be perfect. Even with a plane overflying it 3 different times this game, it's still alive. I guarantee you, if it overflew a Sava 3 times, at least one of those times the Sava's going to kill it, because it lands that second missile, and the plane's dead. And that's 60 points much better spent. at least in my opinion there. So I don't know, how much more brutal can I be in the time remaining? And again, keep in mind, this is all from a place of good intentions. I'm trying to, you sent in for a replayed review, here it is. And honestly, some of my most helpful reviews from other people have been the ones where they sort of go in on the same route of just, what the hell were you thinking here? And, it does really help. Like, here's a moment. What the hell were you thinking here? Your enemy infantry is advancing, you thermomig behind them, you have no recon on anything back here, so you thermomig the open forest. And, like, why? This one, far better. But it would have been nice to drop both of those and make this completely untenable, because you know that there's a CV back here somewhere, but everyone puts it in a different place. Some people put it right back here in that back corner of the zone, some people put it over here, especially if they have control on this side. Some people put it way over on the other side, and you had two thermomigs. Drop one right there, drop one right here, the Iltis probably dies, and if it doesn't, it has to go out of the zone at least, buys you some time. And that time is time you're not getting ticked on +2, because now you have an issue. 17.5 minutes left, 286 points for your opponent, a +1 is no longer good enough. If everything here had been cleared out even 7 or 8 minutes ago, let alone 10 minutes ago, let alone 20 minutes ago, you could have still ticked a +1 to a win, because you still do have control of Boris. But as it stands right now, it's too little too late. With only about 5 minutes left, even if you clear all this out right now, this is still probably a victory for your opponent. Which sucks, because, it's a Sergeant Major, it's a good amount of elo there for you for the win. Which would have been, I think, quite nice. So, double thermomig, we'll talk about this as well, but if you're going to lean heavily on bombers, you need seed. It's not really optional. And eventually, when you're calling in lots of bombers, you need more anti-air on the ground. It's part of what makes bombers, in my opinion, bad buys when things are going really south, because you don't have the money to spend on those assets, right? Yeah, look at that. I think that killed it outright. It should have. It landed directly on the damn thing. Yeah, there you go. So, would have been nice to have done that with the previous one instead of hitting the woods over on the side for no impact. But a thermomig is dead. There was no seed behind. And even the 75-point seed planes, yeah, they're not great, but they do allow you to get a sense of how much opposition you have with those thermomigs, how much they're going to be flying into. It makes your opponent think, oh shoot, I have to seed micro here, even just a little bit, and that makes your bombers a lot safer. And if you get picks with it, great. I actually when I use that thing, I buy both. Because for 150 points, I still get 2 missiles, technically, it's just on 2 different planes, which is a little bit goofy. For sure, but even just having one flying behind here, you see this whole thing light up like a Christmas tree of anti-plane radar AA, and you think to yourself, okay, you know what, maybe not right now. Or, maybe, yeah, right now, and we just accept that we can't necessarily do it again. So, it is tough, because at this point, the objective has changed. Earlier on, the objective was reclaim this section. With 15 minutes left and 310 points for your opponent, that's not good enough anymore. Now the objective has to be to push all the way back into Anna, and even if that is the objective, yeah, another promise died to just a main tank gun. Even if that is the main objective, one buy that you haven't yet done is still the right answer. Super heavy. There's a Leopard 2A1 sitting back there, at least one of them, I think maybe even 2, and yeah, a super heavy along with chaff, and you can push back in pretty well. And this doesn't really matter so much. Like, the thermomig for this sort of thing is a little bit goofy. Like, Oslov 25 spam is, this is your opponent knowing that they have way more points than you because of the trading, and just doing something because they felt like it. And even then, it might get some kills, but yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's tough. It definitely is pretty tough. So that is going to pretty much wrap up most of it. At this point, it's just too many losses to come back from really here. In this game, and I hope this is helpful. I hope the next one goes better because of it, even if it was maybe not as well. I suppose we'll just go into deck review and leave it at that. Yeah, let's take a look here, and I think I'm gonna make a fair number of suggestions. Yeah, 2515 to 1785. That is not close, but then the conquest points are also a reason why it's not close, because you can have wins where you're down by this much, but when your opponent's up by that much and up on conquest points, yeah, it's a good game for them. So we're going to go into deck here. I'm going to make a fair number of recommendations. You have no obligation to follow them, of course, but I think there are a fair number of changes that could be made here to make this better. So first and foremost, 2 units of artillery in the support tab is very expensive and doesn't tend to be worthwhile. And with this drop 2, I really think this unit is underwhelming. It's nice, it's cool to have, but I'm going to make a suggestion that you completely delete your entire tab here, and we rebuild it from the ground up. So we're going to go with the Spatball of 3. We talked about this in Discord the other day, but just to reiterate here, for 30 points you get non-radar wield. The range isn't amazing, but you have a decently long volley, and you have a very fast rate of fire. This thing will get kills, and it's 30 points. That's fine. Some people like the Spatfolka better, but it's mechanized. We need some wield option right here. So this is just basic stuff. And if you want to change it afterward, be my guest. Some people like the Osa AK. Some people like the Prochka. I'm going to recommend the Sava. Try it. I guarantee you'll love it a lot more than you think you will. You can take it at trained. I take 4 at hardened. I'm going to recommend for you right now 4 at hardened. If you lose all of them, then take 6. But you said already that you don't tend to lose your strops. So just treat this like your strop and you won't lose it. So, yeah, now we need missile here. We are going to go for Neva Mit. We're going to take 2, M1T rather. I'm still getting better at that. And we're going to go in and we're going to grab that howitzer back here. Or not howitzer, we're going to grab that mortar. Mortar. And we're going to go into MLRS. And we're going to take the Plotman. And I know you had the Nora B and you had the Orkan, and these are very different, but the Plotman I think will help you a lot, because this is something where you can go up. You have 3 volleys before you have to even resupply this thing, which is really excellent. And in a situation where your opponent's capped your 2-pointer like that, where they have a strong point there, you Plotman it, and what doesn't die is panicked and not combat capable, and there are lots of fires, and it really makes it easier for you to get those pushes on the way. And I think learning how to use it will be a very nice thing for situations like that, which appear to be the ones that you struggle with more than situations where you need that long-range sniper howitzer as an answer, which really didn't come up this last game. I don't know if it does sometimes, but give this thing a try. And then, yeah, you won't have backline sniping capability. If you really, really want that, the Norby is just fine. But try it and see if you like it. So that's going to be the redone support tab here, and we're going to go from there into looking at your ATGM, because the Conqueror's M is very powerful, but 4 is too few. So I recommend you either downvet this thing, which I know downvetting ATGMs is not really the advice that most people give for most things, but it is for the Conqueror's M, just because 4 is too few. Imagine it's something like Mudfight. You have 4 ATGMs, where are you going to put them? It's very uncomfortable. Alternatively, you could take the Drug, which is my favorite for this. You can take them either tracked, or I'd recommend maybe the OTEP 71 if you want wheels, but it is a less powerful ATGM, so if you like the Conqueror's M, and you did have it in there, so I'm assuming you like it, take it down-vetted so you have 6. It's more flexible. The rest of this tab we can largely leave alone. I don't like Bridge-Capes. I'd replace these, but yeah, it's not my deck. And the Mi-25S24 we're just going to get rid of, and we're going to look at the Mi-35. And the whole reason here, I mean, if you think back to what was going on in the beginning of the game, how much more useful would it have been to have 8 ATGMs than to have the 4 kind of goofy 10 HE rockets? This thing moves over, and that looks... Now there's a ATGM that can kill it, the one that killed your S24 and your mortar and. And the Mi-35 also has really good utility of scaring back those AMX-10s. With this hovering behind it, they're never going to pop up to try to kill your M84AN. So maybe that's alive now too, and you have more forces there. So I think it's more expensive, yes, but it is far more traditional of a pick, because it's just very much more of a flexible unit. It's nice if you can fit this in. It's kind of goofy. It's fun, right? But it will cost you performance pretty much all the time. I think you have too many tanks, and frankly, I would cut the Igman, and I'll tell you why. Because we're also going to cut the Promes here, and we're going to go into the Recon tab, and we're going to pick up the T55A Izvidyach. Now, the Izvidyach does not perform like the Igman does. The Igman will kill the Izvidyach in a head-to-head fight, not even close. But you don't buy it to do that. You buy the T-55A Izvidyach because it's 25 points for recon with a gun. You can even get 2 of them for less than the price of the Igman. It's very nice, very flexible. It will help you when you have that situation where you didn't have enough recon on the ground. It'll help you quite a bit with that. Because you're only, your recon tank isn't just the M84AN. You have more options with these guys. It's a lot more flexible, and I think you'll like it. Otherwise, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room here with the Jeep. I think there's pretty much no reason to ever take this. If you are worried about numbers and you don't want to take 6, which I completely understand, 7's considered the minimum for a good reason, I'd recommend the Coat BRDM2U. So for 20 points more, you go from 5 strength to 10 strength, 0 armor to 1 armor all around, and you're actually faster off-road. Same autonomy. And you'd be amazed how much more reliable this thing is. I know you didn't lose the Veliteltska at all this game, and if neither of these come under fire, then yeah, the Jeep is more cost-effective. But you don't plan for the best situation, you plan for the worst one. And the worst one is you take some light artillery fire and have to reposition. This Jeep is dead. Your Coat probably gets to be, well, probably survives long enough to reposition, and yeah, if it doesn't, and it won't sometimes, that really does suck, but it'll be so much more survivable, it's really pretty crazy. So, I'd like to fit in an infantry CV here. I'd recommend you consider it instead of the M84AK, but this is a fine tank CV. It's not amazing, it only has 2 top, but it's fine. It has a really powerful gun, not ideal to actually have to use it, but there you go. Additionally here, let's just talk about this for a second. So the Orao 2 is fine. And this is the thing for me with Entente. I don't like either of their ATGM options that are the traditional ones. The Super Galeb hits like an absolute brick shithouse, but it's very slow. 30% ACM could be better. This thing can often be a one-way ticket. However, you do get the multi-roll with the Molnias, you lose the rocket pods, but that fire position with the rocket pods was a bad idea anyway, so I don't really consider that too much of a loss. I'd recommend you switch to the Super Galeb, or maybe consider something like the SG-25K. Or if your goal is to lean heavily on these thermomigs, you have 2 super heavies. 2. Take Seed. What do you need an ATGM for? Beat them on the ground. So you can take that Seed plane. Let's see where it is. Goodness gracious, I can't find it. There we are. And we take 2 of these at Veteran, and yeah, it's not ideal, but it's alright. You can also take 3, but like, do you really want to spend that many points in Seed? 225 points in Seed for 3 missiles is really pretty crap. So buy these if you're going to lean on the thermomigs, which I seem to like to. And I think this, it's still not how I would build this deck, but I think it will be much stronger for you and how you want to play it than what you currently have. So that's going to wrap up the replay review and the deck review here for today. Thank you all for hanging around, and we'll see you again for a somewhat less angsty cast tomorrow.